Mitchell Stewart Mustaine was just like any other kid growing up. He liked playing ball because that's what kids do. They go outside and they play ball. And no matter the sport, parents will encourage their kids to participate because sports are good. They teach structure, they teach discipline, they teach you how to play nice with others, how to pick yourself up. But above all, they teach togetherness. No one kid more important than the other. No I in team, and everyone gets a trophy. But before long, someone's gonna start to keep score. And that's when things will change. Certain kids will begin to outshine their teammates. They'll run faster, they'll jump higher, and they'll throw harder. And it will come naturally for them. That's the unfair part. And for those gifted ones, the ones that have that thing, they'll have the time of their life. Their hometowns will praise them. Young kids will ask them for autographs. Reporters will earn a living by chasing after them. Cheerleaders will flirt, and no one will tell them no. Their parents will take bragging rights. Retired men will discuss them over coffee, while has-been athletes will dismiss them over beer. Others will choose to mentor them, coach them, live through them from the sidelines. And these hometown heroes, they'll be left to try and make sense of it all. Mitch Mustaine turned out to be one of the lucky ones. He took to football. It came naturally. But to say he was merely a hometown hero would be a waste of time. Because with the help of others, Mitch Mustaine was shaped into one of the most decorated high school football players in America. Whether he asked for it or not.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly look back at my childhood now, growing up, and think that, there was certainly a path from the time I was 4 or 5 years old. I don't really understand the psychology behind it, but you could look at that and argue that, yeah, I mean, there was certainly a path that was already kind of beaten a little bit. There was nothing really exceptional about my childhood in terms of like sports training. I wasn't groomed to be a quarterback. It came easy. It just came kind of natural to me. The awards I didn't realize were even there. I didn't realize you could win like the Gatorade Award, the Parade Award, things of that nature. And I think even then, when all that was happening, it wasn't really impressed upon me. I mean, again, I didn't really, I guess we'd say, seek it out, When I was 8 years old, I wanted to be in the military. I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I wanted to do adventurous things. To play quarterback in college was not my dream. This wasn't it. And it certainly begs the question of whether I missed something or whether I just went the completely wrong direction. But beyond all that, the decisions I made, the directions I went, were mine to make.
Let's bring in one of our college football analysts, and that is Joe Shad. Joe, what can you tell us?
My wife was asking me last night, who is Mitch Mustaine? And I said, well, he was the #1 quarterback in the nation. And he began his career as a college quarterback with 8 consecutive victories. And she said, okay, and then what happened? And I said, I don't know. It's hard to explain what happened.
If this was just about Mitch Mustaine going out there and going 8-0 and getting benched and screwing up on the football field and transferring and screwing up off the field and not becoming, there's a million of those guys out there that were very promising and just didn't make it. But the intriguing part of it is that there was a whole lot more to the story than just Mitch Mustang not being successful on the football field.
He wasn't named the National Player of the Year in high school for nothing. He had the ability to do just about anything on the football field with his arm, with his legs. There were very few things that he could not control.
I mean, it's almost hard to believe that this went down. It's hard to explain why he never fulfilled all the promise that was in his right arm.
Now, if you're not from Arkansas, you may not get what this story meant. But no matter where you're from or where you're at, we all like heroes. And by all accounts, it seemed we had it.
You know, I guess you could say it really didn't, I don't think, start to show until probably 8th grade. Somebody else may have a different recollection of it. You know, coaches that I had, I couldn't say. That was the first time in my life that I was the quarterback full time, and so that, you know, I think that's why I think of it that way. You know, where I kind of came about. So how old would I have been? 13. You know, that's when things kind of took off.
Mitchell Mustang, number 7, quarterback. Up to 1.
I have a hard time remembering that far back, but certainly, I mean, ever since I can remember, I've enjoyed playing it. I don't think I didn't have any formal instruction in football until prior to my junior year in high school.
I guess whenever he got his first scholarship offer, it's kind of when I realized he was, you know, there was potential there. They went off to Hoover, Alabama for a 7-on-7 tournament, I guess right before his junior year.
Just out of the blue, I was coming back, I was driving back from a 7-on-7 tournament in Hoover, Alabama that we just won, got a phone call. This was long before I had given any thought to playing football in college or even knew if I had the time. I hadn't started a high school game yet.
And then right after that's when things kind of started picking up as far as, you know, letters coming in, scholarship offers, different coaches and schools calling. It got really crazy really quick after that.
I just come back, I'd been working news for a while, came back, got back into sports. I think it was before I'd even gone over to the school that I had someone within the office tell me, you know, they've got this kid coming up who's the real deal. And that was the first time I heard the name Mitch Mustang.
I can remember just hearing about it and then seeing it some more. Probably for me, it was his junior year. I was at KNWA, and when I got the job there, the idea was we were going to own the Razorback coverage. We were going to do a better job than anybody else at covering the Razorbacks. In other words, we weren't going to cover everything. You know, you might have this great high school story over here, but we weren't covering that. Well, here comes this kid in high school that's changing our philosophy.
His coach, Gus Malzahn, had arranged for a televised Saturday game. This was the first game of the season, of the 2004 season, and it was going to be on television, and Evangel had this reputation of being kind of a football factory.
Here is Evangel, where they're a powerhouse in the state of Louisiana, out of Shreveport, and they're nationally ranked year in and year out.
You know, when Evangel Christian comes up from Shreveport, Louisiana to play Springdale, you know, you're on the map. I actually came back and watched the game. I went and watched them play.
The iconic high school coach Gus Malzahn and the much anticipated debut of the junior Mitch Mustang. If you're wondering about this young man, he's already been offered a scholarship before he ever played it down on the varsity level. Offered a scholarship by Razorback head coach Houston Nutt at the University of Arkansas, right down the road.
Houston Nutt told me one time when we were talking about Mitch Mustang, I'd asked him something about it. He said Mitch Mustang would be the best quarterback on our campus right now. Everybody knew it.
And there was a lot of hype about this. And I didn't know Mitch from squat. He didn't play the year before. I didn't pay any attention to junior. I've never gone to junior high games. And I didn't go to the game. I watched it on television.
The offense is clicking behind the junior Mitch Mustang. A young man who spent his last 2 years playing on the freshman and sophomore teams, learning the Malzahn system, leading them both to undefeated seasons. Mustaine on the keeper. It's a foot race. And a foot race he will win. Touchdown. 67 yards on the touchdown run by Mitch Mustaine.
It was easy to believe at that point. It was easy to understand what the hype was all about.
What a way to debut. He's going to have a 300-yard day and rush for nearly 100 yards, 67 big ones there. Take a look at Mitch Mustaine. His second rushing touchdown. And there, going up top, finds the open man. He throws for a couple and rushes for a couple. Gus Malzahn couldn't have dreamed Mitch would have a debut like he did today. And it looks more and more like this Springdale 5 is legit.
So it was a big deal for us. It was my first start. And, ended up, we had a really good game against them and went on and won, I believe it was 12 straight. And then had to play Little Rock Central in Little Rock. First play of the second quarter of that game, I broke my arm. Was out for that, missed the rest of that game, we lost. And that was it for that season.
So even with a fractured right arm, Mitchell's future would be focused upon.
I found it amazing just how much interest on what was going on with him and his rehabilitation. Was he going to be able to play again? What was his future?
And there was a lot of talk in the off season, and he had surgery that he might not be the same.
Would he be okay? How would that plate in his arm, how would those screws react? Could he grip the ball? I mean, there's all kinds of different questions.
I broke my arm, I believe it was November 26th. Started throwing again in February and was really focused on that for the next couple months.
And as we got closer to spring football of that year, I started to realize, there's a lot of interest here.
For me, I felt confident that I'd be able to perform, that we'd be an even better team than we were in 04. Really just wanted to get back on the field and prove that.
I remember we sent a crew to cover their 7-on-7 tournaments in the summer.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to A Summer with Springdale. Over the next 2 nights, we'll take you inside the Bulldog program and give you an in-depth look at their cross-country 7-on-7 football tour. From Los Angeles to Alabama, all in an effort to show the country just how good they are.
It was a really fun experience because that allowed people around the state to see what we were doing and what we're all about because, we were what people wanted to hear.
The coaches started to show up. Larry Coker, who was the head coach at Miami, showed up. Mac Brown came up from Texas. Charlie Weiss showed up from Notre Dame. That had never happened around here before. And I think it caused a problem for Houston Nutt. I think he was worried about that. You suddenly got this talent in your backyard. Everybody expects you to get him, but you've got tremendous competition.
I mean, it's head coach after head coach coming to Springdale, Arkansas. 9 miles down the road is the University of Arkansas.
I can remember Houston Nutt took all of his coaches to a Springdale practice one day because Florida or somebody Oklahoma maybe, was going to have 4 coaches there. So they took their whole staff to make sure they outnumbered Oklahoma's coaching staff in Springdale that day.
Offers start coming in, coaches start coming to spring practice and watching summer and all that stuff. And a lot of them off the bat were schools I knew I wasn't interested in, I didn't want to go to. So that was easy to rule out. There were several that I was extremely interested in. That had good programs, were in nice places.
I just heard rumors about the kid. Oh, he's got the big head, he's going to Texas. What kind of a kid from Springdale, Arkansas, 9 miles from Razorback Stadium wants to be a Longhorn? He's interested in Notre Dame, he's interested in Michigan, he's gone big time on us. They're not going to get him. And it's his mother too, because his mother doesn't want him to go there. His mother has a crush on Mac Brown. Mac Brown sent his mother flowers on her birthday, and she's just smitten with this guy. And so Mitch is going to go there. Everywhere you went, you heard these rumors. And I was totally shocked when he suddenly called a press conference and announced he was going to Arkansas. I was like, what happened here? I thought he was going anywhere but Arkansas.
You had live tie-ins from TV stations across the state watching. You can say equal parts relief and euphoria throughout the state. For him, I think it was a little more relief.
I decided to go to the University of Arkansas to be ready.
I'm so happy! And with those few words, Mitchell Mustaine became the prodigal son of Arkansas.
I grew up here listening to Arkansas football on the radio, to Paul Eels. What's not to love about it? You grow up in the state. It's the only school in the state. You know, it doesn't matter what school you go to, you follow the Razorbacks, and you have Arkansas stickers. It's, you know, it's odd for that. You know, you go to California, you have SC stickers and UCLA fans and all that, and they're divided. And you go to Alabama and they're divided, and you go to Mississippi and they're divided. Everywhere has big-time programs where the fan base is divided. Arkansas isn't like that.
That's a selling point. That's a selling point that every coach that's ever coached at the university is when you come here, you're the Dallas Cowboys. You know, there's nobody else in the state.
Unless you're from here, unless you spend a lot of time here, you don't really understand it. So committed to Arkansas, and that was that.
It was very much a celebrated day that this one of the top quarterbacks in the country was going to stay home and play for his hometown team.
I just wanted to get it out of the way, get it done, and get back on the field, and really, more than anything, test myself again. You know, I broke my arm the last play I'd ever played in. You know, we come in, we go down to Shreveport. We beat them the year before. I think they had a little bit of hurt pride, and we were supposed to be undefeated. You know, we were supposed to be that team that was one for the ages at that point. And so it was just like the year before. It was, you know, 90 some odd degrees, 100 degrees, whatever it was, really hot on the turf. And you know, the game was no letdown. You know, there was nothing stellar, but for me it was a big game because it was the game where, you know, I'd been tackled, I'd done quarterback draws and got a few yards, got hit. Okay, my arm's fine, my head's fine, let's go play and let's win.
So I remember probably the most distinct thing was just how the numbers kept piling up. And then you know who Gus Malzahn is, you know the success that he's had in high school, and it was really just sort of a phenomenon. One of those things where on a Friday night, everybody goes and watches their high school play, but if you didn't have a particular high school, and maybe even if you did, you'd sneak over to Springdale and you'd watch a quarter or half, or this Damian Williams guy, or Mitch Mustaine. You know, it was just too easy.
You know, our mindset going into it, each game was, how fast can we get to the mercy rule? You know, is it halftime or is it in the middle of the second quarter? How fast can we get this game over with?
It was just an entertainment factor for 2 years in Arkansas.
Wasn't hard to believe, man. I mean, he obviously did some real special things in high school. It was fun to watch.
Friday nights were where we wanted to be, and that was our fun. I mean, it was fun being that good.
What are you going to remember most about this year?
My teammates, really. Years from now, I probably won't remember the score, but I'll remember them.
You're exactly right. That's Mitch Mustaine. We'll be back with a final word right after this.
So while most of his classmates were busy being teenagers, playing video games and such, Mitchell and his teammates were the video game. And while his classmates were busy reading paperback novels, Mitchell and his teammates were having books written about them.
I thought, you know, okay, it'll be a neat little coffee table type book about a high school football team. Let's face it, this is a team that, you know, had 35,000 people at their state championship game. They had attention, unprecedented attention for a high school football team in this state. I had no idea what I was getting into.
And as for Mitchell himself, his senior season would be capped off with an award tour.
I, Jury M. Van Hoos, Mayor of the City of Springdale, Arkansas, do hereby declare Tuesday, December 6, 2005 as Mitch Mustaine Day.
It's a dang day dedicated to him at Springdale.
I've never seen anything like it. It's Mitch, 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 Mitch.
A disclaimer before our next story. You're about to hear more Mitch Mustaine hype. The incoming freshman quarterback made a trip to Hollywood last week to attend the ESPYs that aired tonight after being nominated for National Athlete of the Year.
All these awards are built up. I hadn't seen the guy change. I hadn't seen his demeanor change, and that's what I love as a quarterback. He's not a big-headed person. He's not a high-ego guy. I love that about him, and I think he's very teammate-oriented. I love that, and to me, that's an unselfishness. That's a giving heart. He has all those qualities to make a great quarterback.
lot of people say Mitch Mustang this, Mitch Mustang that, but it doesn't get old. You give credit when credit's due.
But while there was plenty cause for celebration, there were ultimately complications.
Malzahn called me in, I believe it was the day of our championship game. We were in Little Rock in the hotel. He called me to his room and just said, hey, I want to let you know that Roy Whitkey, the quarterback coach, they let him go. Okay, I forgot about it. We went and played the game, had an awesome night. After that, you know, I'm thinking if I'm a head coach and I fire a quarterback coach and he's dealing with one of our recruits, I'd probably make a phone call or have somebody make a phone call. And that's not to say that I expected to be informed of every decision or being a prima donna about it. It's just I already have some pretty big doubts.
Nobody bothered to ask Mitch, and suddenly Roy Whitkey is fired. Well, is it any wonder this kid decommitted? Nobody had talked to him. Nobody had asked him.
Mitchell had first committed to play for the Razorbacks because his heart told him to do so. But his gut was now telling him to look at his options.
I called Houston, met with them in person, told them, hey, I don't know who I'm going to be working with. And to be honest, I have options that I'm going to explore again because there's still 2 months at that point. And I felt it was best for me to move on.
I knew it was a big deal because of how highly rated he was. I mean, everyone knew the number of awards he won. Everyone knew what the expectations were.
This is a kid who was rated higher than Tim Tebow coming out of high school. This is a kid who went to the All-American game in San Antonio. He's down there with Tebow. He was the one the national media was following.
To think that Mustaine was considered the more accurate passer, the better pro prospect, the more ready-to-play quarterback, really tells you just how high the expectations were.
Tonight on Countdown to Signing Day, they're two of the highest-rated quarterbacks in the country who could compete against each other in years to come. But only one can be named first-team All-South. Who will it be?
I really try not to focus on the rankings.
At that point, just kind of got back into the recruiting swing. Had the Army game coming up. The landscape had changed a little bit in terms of where everybody else had gone. Some of the other big name quarterbacks, they'd all kind of settled themselves. There was just a lot going on at that point. I think most people, wasn't really mad or upset. I was just kind of wondering what was going on, what was in my head. Admittedly, I didn't pay much attention to it, and I don't think it would have helped me to do that.
So many coaches and so many athletes will tell you, I don't read the newspaper, I don't read blogs, I don't listen to sports talk radio. Okay, most of the time they're lying.
The drama got ridiculous. Mitch Mustang had the misfortune of coming along right about the time message boards got big in Arkansas. He himself signed on to this board, and he would get in arguments with people about himself. Some guy comes on there and says, I have it on good authority that Mitch is going to Notre Dame. And then Mitch would get on there with this fake name and say, I have it on good authority that Mitch Mustang hadn't decided what he's going to do.
I mean, this is a kid that took my phone number and put it on Facebook as his phone number. And I was getting phone calls from people in the middle of the night. Come to Arkansas, Mitch, you're the best. This is on my phone. And he's just playing a prank on me.
What's this kid doing? But that's Mitchell, okay? I mean, that's just Mitch.
And there were all these rumors flying about, what's he going to do? He's now mad at Arkansas. This kid's crazy. And we just decided to see if he would come on our radio show and try to talk about some of these things. He did a marvelous job of doing this 2-hour interview and not giving us any hint about where he was going to go to school. But while he was doing this, I noticed there was a little 3x5 card, and it had an Arkansas schedule on it, schedule of games for that year. And he took one of these 3x5 cards and he began folding this card and folding it and folding it and folding it. And then toward the end of the first hour, I saw him tearing this card into little pieces, and they were all the same size. It was one of those moments where you feel like you just scratched the surface of finding out what a person's really like.
If Mitchell had doubts, it was up to the University of Arkansas to erase them.
It was so important for Nutt to keep Mustaine in state, whether or not he believed that he was going to be a first-team All-American quarterback or not. But he needed to make a charge at him.
He needed to get Mitch. That's just the bottom line.
The 04 and 05 seasons, his junior and senior year, Arkansas football was horrible. Back-to-back losing seasons under Houston Nutt. Now people are watching, even though it's in high school, this Malzahn guy and these flashy players that are really talented doing really entertaining things that, oh, by the way, you can win with. And so with it being so close to Arkansas, the Fayetteville campus, you know, you just start having these conversations that are taking place with boosters and people that have influence in the program and graduates. And then, of course, here comes the big argument, you know, can a high school coach in Malzahn really help this team?
I think everybody that knows anything about football is you're a little bit skeptical about whether a high school system is going to work at the college level, in particular the SEC.
People saw hope in that Springdale 5 for something they didn't have, which was a passing attack to go along with these great running backs. You know, Arkansas could run for 1 billion yards in a game, but they couldn't pick up a big third down when they had to have it. The combination of the Razorbacks not being very good, the offense being pretty conservative, and this really attractive thing that met the needs of those first two I mentioned, right up here at Springdale, not far from the Arkansas campus, seemed like it just had to happen.
On the surface, it seemed like a great idea. I mean, here's this guy who obviously is on the cutting edge of offensive football. Arkansas needs to improve its offense. It needs a quarterback. Why not bring him and his explosive wide receiver friend and his, you know, standout tight end along with him?
So some folks got together and came up with a plan. It seemed like the right thing to do.
So I remember answering the phone and I said, "Yes, sir, what's going on?" He said, "Well, I just want to let you know I took the offensive coordinator job at the University of Arkansas."
Some boosters got together, decided, hey, we'll bring Gus Malzahn in. Houston's a great head coach, but he's a bad play caller. We'll solve this one problem by bringing this tremendous play caller in with his great offense, and we'll get all these players.
Well, I mean, there was great pressure on Houston to, you know, who made Malzahn happen? Was it a booster? Was it Lindsey? I don't know.
I don't know if there's anybody that cares more about the Razorbacks than Jim Lindsey. Jim Lindsey started Arkansas, played in the NFL, came back to Arkansas. I mean, he has really started from the ground up and built an empire. Jim Lindsey is also a pretty humble guy that has given a lot of money to the University of Arkansas, played for Frank Broyles, and there's a tightness, a friendship there that was probably tested in this whole time. Because right on the other side is one of Jim Lindsey's best friends, Gary George, who is at the heart of Springdale, you know, and they have a poultry company, and there was a interesting triangle between Springdale's Gary George, Jim Lindsey right in the middle, and Frank Broyles and the Arkansas Razorbacks. And I'm sure that there were a lot of really interesting conversations. I know just enough to know that there were many conversations. So when you have this intimate of a situation, it becomes really personal.
And what followed was a pretty much real-life example of that classic line from Cool Hand Luke, what we have is a failure to communicate. Nobody communicated.
The thing is, there's a lot of speculation about exactly what happened, who told what to whom. Someone within the athletic department, higher up than Houston, made it clear that he had to hire Gus Malzahn and to offer him whatever it took. They needed to get Gus, and they needed to get Mitch, and they needed to get Damian, and they had to get these Springdale kids to come.
Knowing what I know, it sure was hard to believe that it wasn't a bad marriage from the get-go. The contrasting styles were an indicator from the word go. Everybody that knows Houston Nutt, he's a run-first guy, ball possession, play good defense, and everybody that knows Malzahn knows he's a spread them out, sling around the field and score 50. You relate that to the kind of the way that it happened. I think all those kids were going elsewhere.
You know, here I am, I'm committed to Florida, Damon's committed to Florida. What does Florida do? They throw it all over the field. Bartley's committed to Notre Dame.
Mitch wanted to go to Notre Dame, and he was going to go with Bartley.
What did Notre Dame do? They threw it all over the field. So why would we want to come to an offense where they hand the ball off 50 times a game?
Will Arkansas become something other than a run-first team if they have a quarterback like Mitch Mustang?
Yeah, once Malzahn got on board and that whole deal picked up, there was the speculation following the end of our senior year. But like I said, I'd made my decision, hey, I'm going to move on, go and go look at my options again. You guys figure it out and we'll talk when you do.
And there was a period of about 2 or 3 weeks right after that happened when it wasn't clear that Gus was going to be able to bring him. And then most of us were going, what happens next? You hired this guy in part to bring this quarterback here. What if he doesn't come? What do you do now?
I don't remember when we all kind of made that decision we were all going to go to the University of Arkansas. I told you I have a bad memory at this shit. I wipe it out.
He is Mitch Mustaine. He joins us now on the U, and I'm going to ignore the fact that your name is awesome and just move on. Initially, Mitch, you committed to Arkansas. Then you wanted to look at other options, then recommitted to Arkansas. What was different from your first commitment to this final one?
Well, the first time I committed, they had as their offensive coordinator, Roy Wickey, who is now at Arizona State. He got fired. I decided to open it up at that time, look around a little bit, and really make sure I made the right decision. And you know, they made some hires there at Arkansas, and you know, put together a staff that I felt really comfortable with Gus Malzahn and Alex Wood coming in.
Well, for those who don't know, Gus Malzahn is your high school coach over at Springdale. He was named Arkansas's offensive coordinator. How important was that to your decision?
You know, that was a key factor as far as being comfortable, but it wasn't the deciding factor like most people thought it would be.
An iconic high school football coach who had never coached in college before was landing a prominent position. And I thought it was no coincidence that the best player in the country, who he coached in high school, and all his friends were lining up to join the Razorbacks party.
The #1 quarterbacking recruit in the nation, Mitch Mustaine. Thanks so much for your time, and good luck over at Arkansas.
Thanks for having me, guys.
He's staying in state. He's staying with many of his teammates. He's staying with his high school coach.
Well, Houston, that best recruit might have been the high school coach. All of a sudden, you get the quarterback, and then you get 3 other players.
There should be no apologies for the fact that it was a package deal. The NCAA didn't consider it to be a violation, so why should they?
I think admittedly it was a bit strange for all of us. You know, the philosophies are completely different. Seeing what I'd seen of Houston and his guys and the way they operated.
We're preparing together, and it's just been good, been a great fit.
Seeing those two philosophies come together, it was kind of like maybe like Obama hiring President Bush to be his advisor. It just doesn't really fit.
I think I'd be lying to you if I told you at that point, you know, you didn't go, what in the hell is going on? And you really hope as a fan at that point, and as a former player, as alumni, you hope it works out.
You know, we had a lot of reassurances from a lot of people, a lot of guys that have a lot of pull, that, hey, we're going to make sure that this is what we get to, that we get to Malzahn's type style.
Our head coach is there. He's the offensive coordinator. You know, we can play in the spread offense like we wanted to.
Looking back on it, I mean, there were things said that I knew and I felt and I knew really honestly that, you know, these assurances couldn't be kept and they couldn't be made in any real sense. But you know, all the pieces were put together, everybody put on their face, kind of told us what we needed to hear, what we wanted to hear, and so we thought, okay, it's perfect.
I remember when I visited with the Springdale Five and Gus Malzahn for the first time in Fayetteville. One of the things that all the players told me was that they didn't just consider Malzahn their coach. They considered him a father figure. They considered him a spiritual leader.
On and off the field, he was a big inspiration in all of our lives. Spiritually, you know, he led a good example.
You know, they attended the same church. You know, they portrayed themselves as a group who didn't just study football together, they also prayed together, which to me was very telling.
I think locked in there somewhere is this whole business of his dad not being around and doesn't have this father figure.
You know, Coach Malzahn was a father figure to us.
So yeah, I think Mitch put a lot of trust into him. You know, someone he could take advice from and, you know, see what he needed to do, see what would be best for him.
We were set at the University of Arkansas.
We're going to have an offense that we're familiar with. We're all going to get to play together at a school that we'd all like to play at. You know, there was one big holdup, and that was the staff that was already there. That was the only holdup we had and the only reservation. So this pacified a lot of that, and we thought, all right, we can get this done. We can live with this, and we made the decision. We committed. I mean, the rest is kind of history from there.
It's a classic example of people that don't know football getting involved influencing an athletic director who then says, hey, we need to do this. Houston Nutt deserves some blame in this too, because he never stood up and said, I don't want to do this.
What's so amazing is nobody really believed in the situation. Nutt didn't believe it was going to really work. The kids didn't really believe it was going to work. The parents didn't really believe it was going to work. It's like the worst moment in life is when we know we shouldn't do something and somebody convinces us to do it and we go, I knew I shouldn't have done that. You told me to do that. Malzahn had to have his doubts coming in about really calling his own offense. I've been talking to the families of the Springdale Five leading up to them coming to Arkansas. They didn't really believe that Houston Nutt would ever change. And Nutt didn't really ever want to change, but he had to.
I think what was going through Houston Nutt's mind is our philosophies, our theories, our approaches to offense aren't the same, but I'll find a way to make this work because it's worth it.
And so he had to do some things to save his job. Malzahn had an opportunity to coach for the Razorbacks, and probably part of him felt like he could kind of help this situation too. But I think everybody went against their own convictions of whether this was really going to work. And there was just this immense pressure to make it happen. And so it did.
What we've got here is failure to communicate.
So with a plan in place, Mitchell again followed his heart. He stayed home. He and his teammates would be Arkansas Razorbacks.
We graduated on Saturday, moved into the dorm on Sunday, and started class on Monday. And so that was how we started college. I wish I was living in one of the nice football movies, but I can't really honestly say that I was. Maybe some of the other guys were, and good for them, but you know, my focus was on the fact that I didn't want to look like an idiot and look like a fool if I got to play in a game.
Less than 2 weeks before the start of fall camp, and that's when it's put up or shut up time. The hype, the excitement level, it's returned despite back-to-back losing seasons.
Do you feel like with what's happening, it's been re-energized?
I do. I think we need to be cautious a little bit because, you know, there's a lot of good things are being said right now, and it wasn't too long ago, wasn't too many good things being said.
I think there was a lot of hesitation. If you listen to the talk radio shows or the newspaper or anything at that time, made it seem like Arkansas had never won a football game. And now that Malzahn it was coming and they got us guys to come, that all of a sudden we're going to win the SEC and this, that, and the other. And I could understand how that rubs people wrong. It's pretty insulting if you've been playing for 3, 4, 5 years at this point. You're working your butt off, and all of a sudden everybody's just focused on these new guys that are 18 years old.
It's interesting, we haven't heard a lot about the incoming class. They've kind of been low-key over the summer. How much does it help them to kind of be out of the spotlight?
You know, I think it's good. I know a lot of you guys probably don't like that, but I think it's good that we just don't put so much attention on those guys right now. They're going to have enough. We got some momentum, and it's been great. Had a very good recruiting class, and this is a big step for them. From Friday night to Saturday night, big step.
You know, a lot of the junior, senior, the older class, the upper class guys, they've been there for a while, you know, had played for Nutt for a long time, certainly had their loyalties. Okay, we understand why the attitudes are what they are, and there's not a whole lot we can do to change that. You know, I can't change the fact that they hired Malzahn as the offensive coordinator, but it is what it is, and everybody on that team to that point had made the decision that was best for them. Upperclassmen, underclassmen, didn't matter. Coaches, they're all there because that's the decision they made for whatever reason.
You know, with the new guys coming in and try to get organized as far as giving your guys the best chance of being successful, you know, during the game, you know, you've got to be very organized in practice. And so, you know, we feel good about where we're at, but it's all about getting to the field improvement. You know, there's been a lot of talk and all that, things look good and all that, but our players and coaches are ready to get to the field and see what happens. And then, you know, you throw in trying to get ready for USC also.
The verdict's in, and Robert Johnson got the nod when offensive coordinator Gus Malzahn told the team, an announcement that the team applauded and Houston Nutt endorsed.
We're going to name Robert Johnson our starting quarterback, and I tell you what, Robert has improved, and boy, we want everybody to get behind him.
So Johnson's going to take the first snap against Southern Cal, something he's earned in the offseason and deserves a lot of credit for. Clearly, he's not the fan favorite and had to overcome not only last year's woes, but the hype of Mitch Mustang.
Mitch Mustang is an excellent quarterback, and for a freshman, he's done a lot of good things.
I agreed with it, to be honest. I thought he was our best option. The year before at SC had been a blowout. They'd lost a lot of their guys. Reggie and Matt were gone. So There's a lot of excitement that this may be our chance. I think in the back of our heads, we all knew that SC, they just reload. We knew we had our work cut out for us, and so we get in the game. It ends up being a rout. Kind of dashed our hopes a little bit, and as far as I was concerned, the game was over. That was it. Before I know it, I get the call to start warming up, and probably about as nervous as I'd been as I can ever remember being. At this point, I forget how many minutes were left in the game, but get in the game, I don't remember even what plays we called. It just kind of went back to habit.
And there is the freshman quarterback, the player of the year. Gatorade USA today just had remarkable numbers at Springdale, Arkansas High School right down the road. And the crowd was very welcoming for this local hero.
I remember having to roll out to my left, and Lawrence Jackson knocking me down. I mean, that was kind of an eye-opener.
And he completes his first pass, and they roar like he just threw a 70-yard touchdown pass, right?
Well, this is what he's used to doing, the hurry-up, 2-minute type offense. They're in that mode completely right now, and this is what he did every game, all game at Springdale last year.
And then I threw a long pass to Damian. Everything just got supercharged. I mean, that was about the most energy I've ever felt in a game in my life.
Mustaine, who looks very comfortable, throws a strike to Williams, his teammate in high school last year, and a 42-yard strike. And you are witnessing the beginning of what could be the Mitch Mustaine era at Arkansas.
And then ran the quarterback sneak in the end zone. Really didn't even know what to do with myself.
And now the quarterback will take it himself. Well, how impressive was that?
Obviously I didn't take the time to stop and soak it all up and take it all in for what it was, but every time someone asks about it or that film pops up, it kind of takes me back a little bit and makes me kind of want that time back. And there's always that thought, if I knew then what I know now.
And he looked extraordinarily at ease.
Yeah. Well, it's his system. He's more comfortable in this offense than Robert Johnson.
And with that, Mitch Mustaine was a hero. The hero we had hoped for.
The first game against USC was a deal breaker for Houston. I think that game was one where you get embarrassed at home, new system, all the great players. Is this really all worth it?
Breaking news, we're going to go right to Houston Nutt at a late afternoon press conference in which he announced that freshman Mitch Mustaine will now be the starting quarterback.
We're going to go with Mitch right now, get him ready, and Casey be right there behind him. At this particular time, I just feel like we need to make this move.
He was now a public figure, whether he asked for it or not.
When you're the Razorback quarterback, it's as big as any political position out there, as any CEO out there. That's when it kind of soaks in to really what you're doing and what you're in the middle of and the magnitude of it all.
There's no better position and there's no worse position. And the problem is, for a young man, people compare you to the governor or the head coach to the governor. Well, those two guys are adults. You're not. Even some of the most experienced politicians or powerful guys in the country can't handle that. And they've got a lot of handlers around them to try to clean it up. But you're talking about, a freshman dealing with all of the stuff, the ups and downs of what it means to be the most popular person in your state.
It's a lot of pressure. I mean, it really is. It's a lot of pressure, but it's one of those things where you got to take the good with the bad and the bad with the good. At the end of the day, it's what makes a place special, but for a lot of people, it can bury you as well.
Everything from that point on just got accelerated. I really didn't expect to get the start the next week. It's one thing to go in for 2 drives against USC and score a touchdown. That's fine. From that point on, it just became a blur, and week after week went by, and really just trying to keep my head above the water.
From that point on, it was just a mess. Once that season started, and in particular, once Mitch Mustaine started the second game of the year, 2 factions of supporters started going at each other. People who supported Houston Nutt and people who supported Gus Malzahn.
There was resentment in that locker room toward Malzahn and his boys, as they were referred to. You have a freshman class, a very heralded freshman class, on magazine covers. talked about on radio. And then you have a group of guys there who are very much committed to Houston Nutt. A very talented group of guys, okay? I mean, we're talking about Darren McFadden, Felix Jones, guys who went on to play in the NFL. I mean, you had a really talented team. There was resentment there.
There was definitely a split. The tension was real. I mean, you could feel it, and I don't think it really manifested itself till later on in the season.
We saw some glimpses of what Mustang can do. I'm thinking of the Vanderbilt game. In Nashville, he kind of pumps the safety off, throws it over the top. Pretty sure it was to Monk. I mean, you gotta understand that we hadn't seen anything like that. And so anything Mitch did in terms of throwing the football well was a big deal to Razorback fans. There was just a gap from Clint Sterner's success as a quarterback to the year Mitch Mustang got here.
After Clint had left, there wasn't a quarterback that had come through that had shown that he could own a game.
So for most of Houston Nutt's tenure, it was a combination of quarterbacks not being very good or supremely gifted athletically like Matt Jones.
Matt Jones certainly did his part, but he did it in the way that you would expect a freak athlete to do. And I don't have those talents.
So when Mustang got here, it was finally back to a quarterback that could throw the football. That's how people felt.
Mustaine over the middle, touchdown Arkansas. Ben Cleveland, who he connected with throughout his high school career. They will go home next week to meet the Crimson Tide.
That was a game in which Mitch threw 4 or 5 interceptions. He didn't look very good. Alabama could have won the game. They missed a field goal to win it. Went into overtime. One play left, and that's the play where he threw the ball between 2 defenders to Ben Cleveland and won the game with that touchdown pass. And if you've ever seen it, it had to be perfect.
Rush 3 and drop 8. In the corner. It's caught. Touchdown. Springdale, freshman to Springdale. Mustaine is 3-0 as a starter.
But it was interesting. Mitch never got credit for that.
He was 3 of 6 with 3 interceptions until that last TD pass.
By that point, this whole thing was so controversial. People had picked sides. You're either on Gus's side or on Houston Nutt's side. You either like Mitch Mustaine or you don't like him. And if you don't like him, he didn't win that game with that pass. It didn't happen.
The game is over, the field is clear, the stadium is empty, and I get a phone call from my producer. My producer says, "Who can you get for us? We're live on the air, we want a guest." I said, "How about Mitch Mustaine?" So I give Mitch the phone, and I'm sort of standing there watching this with Gus Malzahn off to the side with his wife. They're all beaming. And I'm thinking to myself, this is the first of many Mitch Mustaine ESPN interviews. And I'm thinking now that was probably Mitch Mustaine's last ESPN interview. So,
you've got a starter, they're winning games. Maybe he doesn't look great every week, but he does have his moments. He goes on the road at Auburn. Auburn was ranked, I think, in the top 5 at that time. And yet, he just didn't feel like that people were accepting this guy and what he was doing. I knew what I was looking at. I've been around long enough to know freshmen don't usually do that. Matthew Stafford was starting at Georgia and he was struggling too.
I knew we had the supporting cast with McFadden, Felix, Peyton, Marcus Monk, all our guys on offense. I knew that I had enough talent around me to really prop me up and help me in that aspect. But personally, it was a real struggle.
I think at the end of the day, it's a pretty good talent around him. And the further the year went on, I think the better Mitch got. But now we're getting more into Gus's offense. We're getting further and further away from what Coach Nutt believes in as the year goes on.
From a Mitch Mustaine development standpoint, I just don't think he ever got a chance to develop. The biggest problem that Mitch had in his development, or any quarterback under Houston Nutt at the University of Arkansas, was the lack of reps they got throwing the football in practice. I can remember going to Los Angeles and watching Arkansas and Southern Cal in warm-ups, and how many reps that Matt Leinart and those guys got before the game in 7-on-7 passing drills were more than Arkansas had in practice all week.
Here it was like, well, let's save your arm, which is fantastic if you're 50 years old.
It's going to be more difficult when you don't have as many reps.
You have to have somebody that's there to develop you and say, okay, here's where you're making mistakes. And all of that based around a core philosophy of here's what we do, here's how we do it. And within that, you can develop your quarterbacks.
And so his development, I just didn't think it was given a chance.
From the outside, I mean, I think we take it for granted because we were on the inside of it and we saw kind of what was going on. From the outside, it was, okay, Gus is here now and it's his offense. He's the coordinator, so obviously whatever we're doing is his stuff. Constantly as we win, it's, okay, well, you know, we're winning because we're running Gus's deal. And Gus's deal is great, and it's doing this, and look what it's doing. Look at the numbers it's putting up. Look who it's beating. We beat Auburn at Auburn when they were ranked number 2.
And Houston Nutt always talked about not caring who got the credit. He would teach that. But it seemed like there always had to be a score on who gets the credit.
You know, we're not entirely running Gus's stuff. Some of this is the old stuff. Why are we not getting the credit for it?
And it's unfortunate because I think Houston Nutt's a pretty good guy, but when you're in a position where you feel like you're being devalued, well, what's not going to do? Defensive.
This is a high school coach, and maybe I'm kind of tired of hearing about how smart he is, because sometimes people forget that Houston Nutt was an offensive mind himself.
Coach Nutt had great assistant coaches. That's where he thrived, was when he had assistant coaches around him, not guys that were coming up that were going to go and move on and be head coaches. I think it was probably obvious from the get-go that Gus was going to end up being a big-time coordinator and potentially a head coach, and maybe that was a little threatening, I don't know.
If Mitch succeeded, Gus succeeded. And I think Houston Nutt had a plan to try to figure out a way to either neutralize him, get him away from the offensive coordinator's position, or get him to leave entirely. And I think he had that plan because he felt threatened.
Yeah, I think there was certainly a lot of resentment, a lot of ill will between the parties at that point. And only compounded, I think, in late October, about the time South Carolina came up, that the book came out that Kurt Voigt wrote about the Springdale team. Comments that I had made, comments I don't regret, comments I think were spot on.
He called him a dork. He was frustrated, and so we actually talked. How can he handle this the best? And kind of the idea we came up with was beat him to the point. You know, go and apologize in advance.
Go to him, explain myself, so that we could move past that, and so that we could get on with that. And that was in October.
So hey, I was in high school, I said these things, I'm sorry, I was a kid, and Houston told him, no problem, I understand it, it's not a problem at all, water under the bridge. The first time Houston was asked about it on camera, a moment when he could have ended everything. He could have just said, Mitch came to me 2 weeks ago and apologized, and it doesn't matter, it's water under the bridge. He didn't.
It's easy to see, guys, why the 2 weeks there prior to South Carolina, why there's a little bit of digression. He had a lot on him. It's a book. Here's a book, he's worried about it.
When he did that, when he hung him out to dry like that, you know, it just opened the floodgates for people who already harbored resentment toward Mitch, toward Gus, toward this group.
By this point, we're a week before the South Carolina game, and
I remember South Carolina, we were doing a walkthrough and they had some different schemes as far as blitzing, and Mitch wasn't able to pick up this certain read, and coach kept getting frustrated with him. And next thing I know, he says, Casey, come here. I need you to pick up this check right here. Do you know this check? Yes, sir, I do. And Casey comes back a little bit later. I said, what did Coach Nutt say?
It was the Thursday before the South Carolina game. Ben caught me. I remember we were in the stairwell. He stopped me and said, hey, Casey told me that Coach Nutt approached him at practice, said, hey, the first mistake he makes, first pick he throws, you're going in.
Even if it would have never got back to Mitch, there's not a more difficult thing to do than to play the quarterback position when you know there's doubt in the guy that's making the decision of whether you play or not.
At that point, it was you know, damned if I do, damned if I don't. I mean, the fact of the matter is, at some point I was going to throw another interception. At some point I was going to make a mistake.
I'm a firm believer in, once you decide to go with a guy, I'm going to do everything in my power to allow that guy to play his best. And in my opinion, that's not doing that.
They can neutralize some of that size. Williams, Fish, and Crawford in as 3 wide receivers. And Mustaine to throw. And it's intercepted. Picked off by Captain Munnerlyn here.
Well, Mitch Mustaine, not the start that he wanted. He did not play very well last week against Louisiana Monroe. Threw 3 interceptions.
We get in there, the game starts, and I don't remember the play. I just remember just to the left, and I threw it, picked off. I get yanked, Casey goes in, and I remember standing on the sideline and Ben coming over.
And I said, hey, I told you, one of those kind of deals. He said, yeah, you're right.
After he benched me, that's fine. I understand it. I'm not playing stellar, and Casey played fine after that. He did a good job. That all makes perfect sense to me. The problem was that nobody said a word to me about it. And I'm not talking about encouragement, about keep your head up. I don't care about that. I care about let's fix the problem. There's obviously something that is bothering you enough that warranted pulling me. Well, not a word was said to me. Not by Houston, not by Gus, not by anybody. It literally seemed, it was like nothing ever happened. It was like I'd never stepped foot in the building.
When Mitch threw that pass and he walked off the field, you could just tell that this was going to be a big deal.
Here's Mitch, you know, he's 8-0, a true freshman. You live and die with some of the things, but not Coach Nutt. He didn't like the shine of Mitch stealing the show from everybody.
When you've got a freshman quarterback playing, there's going to be mistakes made. There's going to be interceptions thrown. There's going to be checks missed. And that's part of it. But instead of saying he's a freshman, he's growing from each one of them, we say that's our weakness. We need to replace it. And I think that was a direct result of everything going on off the field, not what was going on the field.
It seemed as though Houston Nutt was looking for a reason to bench Mitch Mustaine. But to me, when your quarterback is winning games, he deserved the opportunity to continue to play.
It didn't make much sense that Mustaine really never got back in the game after he was taken out. That was the bizarre part.
I had an SEC coach ask me that offseason, why didn't Houston stick with Mitch Mustaine, a prominent SEC coach? And I said, I'm not sure. And the coach said, well, I asked Houston before the game when we were talking, and he didn't really get an answer.
So while an 8-0 winning streak should have been celebrated, the state became divided. The locker room became divided.
It really was. I mean, it was like people were attributing his success because Gus came and because we came. You know, he's certainly happy with the success overall, but not with how it was happening. And I think that really irked at him. And I mean, it's understandable. If you know, people are saying, see, I mean, all you had to do was bring someone else in beside yourself, and this is what happens. And yeah, I mean, you'd really have to swallow your pride and take it for what it's worth, and then learn what you can. And I think the great ones can do that.
Here we are again with a team that's having some success and probably could have won the LSU game or could have played for the national championship if they had a passing attack.
There was the Houston Nutt camp, and there was the Gus Malzahn, Mitch Mustaine camp.
Do you feel misled in any way from being hired and things that were told to you being hired to today?
No, you know, I'm sitting here and I'm an offensive coordinator for University of Arkansas. I've got it's a dream job for me. It's a dream job for me, and I'm just trying to do everything in my power to help us win.
To an extent, you can't blame Houston Nutt for doing what he felt he had to do to win games. I mean, when you have Darren McFadden, Peyton Hillis, and Felix Jones, you need to run the football successfully. But I do believe that if they allowed Gus to run some more of what he wanted to do, I mean, who knows, maybe they would have won the SEC that year.
They did win 10 games, but everybody remembers they lost their last 3. LSU, the SEC championship game, and the bowl game.
For our locker room to be so divided and for us to win so many games, that really tells you how talented our team was.
If these two men had ever sat down and talked to each other, I think they'd have won the national championship that year. I do. Because they won all those games with this totally dysfunctional thing going on. They had a quarterback that felt like his coach didn't like him. He felt like he didn't belong on the team. He had teammates calling him out. You know, he had booster friends of the head coach sending him obscene emails.
I mean, Mitch Mustaine threw his share of interceptions, but to be called out as the interception king, which I think one person wrote to him, was just a joke. I mean, that person, whoever it is, he or she should be ashamed of themselves.
I think where it eventually took Houston Nutt down, he had a booster that was friends with his family who was so upset by all this stuff and so convinced that Mitch Mustaine was a part of this, his mother was a part of it. All these people from Springdale were a part of a group of people attacking her friend, Houston Nutt, the head coach, that she took it upon herself to start writing emails about this and trying to warn people of the horrible dangers that were taking place.
The fact that Mitch Mustaine, received hate emails, to me, was completely uncalled for.
It basically disparages him. It's somewhat obscene. To send that to a college kid in his dorm room, he's going to come in one day and check his emails and see this stuff from somebody he doesn't know, but somebody he will eventually find out is not only a booster, but a close friend of Houston Nutt. What do you think your reaction would be? You have all this drama going on. They still won 10 games. What happens if there's none of that?
Big news tonight in the Razorback Nation with freshman wide receiver Damian Williams leaving the team.
Yes. Now, this all started with a private meeting last week between parents of former Springdale players and athletic director Frank Broyles. That meeting became public this week and created a whirlwind of controversy.
The parents in that meeting wanted to know where the Hog football program was headed and if their sons would be better suited somewhere else.
We do, however, have some clarity on a situation. Houston Nutt, Gus Malzahn, Ben Cleveland, Mitch Mustaine all say they're here to stay and are getting along just fine.
I had a good meeting with Mitch. Earlier in the week. And he apologized to me. He wants to be here. He wants to be a Razorback, and I accept that 100%.
Coach Nutt also said that there's no animosity at all between him and Gus Malzahn. In fact, he said, please ask Gus Malzahn about it following practice.
As far as me and Houston, I mean, he hired me, and I consider him a friend, and we've had a good working relationship.
I know people love SEC football, and I know people in the state of Arkansas are passionate about their football, but some of the things that went down are just illogical and would be hard to explain to almost anybody in any other state.
Only in Arkansas. Woo, pig, suey.
The day he left, I talked to Mitch, and his exact quote to me was, "Who am I going to trust now?"
They had a relationship in high school that was father-son type relationship, then I'm mad as hell.
With the writing on the wall, it seemed clear to Mitchell that Arkansas would not be where he finished his career.
I remember reporting that Mitch was transferring. I remember reporting that Mitch was transferring to USC. I remember reporting that Gus Malzahn took the Tulsa job.
I knew Malzahn was going to be successful wherever he went, and I knew he was going to do well at Tulsa, but the worst thing you can do, you break up with someone, is remain close to him. And I just really wanted to get out, and I wanted to go somewhere else and do something else. And I knew this was my opportunity to get that done and to go somewhere else and to just live a life apart from it.
There's no doubt in my mind that Mitch Mustaine would have put up big numbers if he had followed his high school coach one more time. He did it for Fayetteville, Arkansas, but I don't think Mitch Mustaine had it in him to go play football in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
I knew that I'd have to get away from Arkansas and not be close enough to where I could drive back and forth on the weekends or on a bye week or something like that.
Well, it just seemed like to me that it was a chance for him to start over, and it was also a chance to go to the biggest brand in college football at the time. I think the problem for him was he went to the wrong system.
There was definitely a part of Mitch Mustaine that wanted to show that he could be successful running an offense that wasn't the Gus Malzahn offense. And I think also Mitch wanted to show that, he had potential as a pro quarterback, as a pro-style quarterback.
Having the experience I'd had the previous 6 months, 7 months, thinking, okay, I've seen the middle of the road. I don't want to transfer to another average team. I don't want to play just to be out there. I want to play and I want to get better. And I knew I was going to find, there are very few programs in the country that would be able to do that, and USC was one of them. To be honest, that was pretty well it for me.
He wanted to play in the NFL, and what better school at that point to prepare to play quarterback in the NFL than under Pete Carroll?
And it probably was appealing, to go out to Hollywood. Get away from the fishbowl and go to something so big that, people aren't even going to mess with you. They're not even going to bother with you.
There's no doubt that Mitch Mustaine, felt that he fit right into that LA lifestyle. Music, movies, weather, Hollywood, women. I mean, you know, it was interesting to me. Here's this kid from Arkansas who so easily slipped into the LA lifestyle.
While it was very appealing, at the end of the day, I think it was far enough away that he didn't have to worry about all the drama following.
So nice, man. I'm staying here.
I think Mitch was a lost person. You know, he got caught up in the high life of LA.
You know, overall, I'd categorize it as a very good experience. Certainly frustrating a lot of times. You know, starts off with my 08 competition with Mark. There's argument made that we went head-to-head in that. He played extremely well. You know, I honestly couldn't say with any certainty I would have played any better. You know, then we go on and Matt comes in, extremely talented, extremely mature for his age at the time when he came in. I mean, there's no doubt he'd been trained very well. He knew what he was doing. He understood what was expected and what he was going to face. And so, you know, from there it was pretty well set and knew where I was going to be on that. So that part was frustrating. And then there was a lot of time in between that. You know, dealing with a lot of things. There was a long period where I was really just over the game.
It's just hard to understand, you know, and I would make calls out to the West Coast, you know, what's up with Mitch Mustaine? You know, these other guys are hurt. How's he doing with his reps? And they would say, well, not much. They say, you know, for some reason he's never really grasped the offense.
Real fast one, V. Go again there, Mitch. Slow down.
I mean, I remember speaking to Lane Kiffin about the quarterback competition, and you know, I remember Lane Kiffin saying that Mitch was having a hard time grasping things, and I definitely got the feeling that you know, focus was part of it.
So you keep that hip open so you see what's going on.
Go, Mitch. Go again.
Our bump, trade left bump.
The way NFL teams scout colleges now, there's no question that even with limited repetitions, you would have a chance to at least get a workout for an NFL team. But, you know, people say, oh, look at Tom Brady. You know, Tom Brady at least had some video footage. There's hardly any video footage of Mitch Mustaine from USC. So, you know, to think that he was going to follow in the Matt Castle model, you know, to me, you know, really wasn't very realistic.
Part of the USC thing was, you know what, I can go out there and I can do what Brady did. I can be a 7th round pick based on potential, or I can do what Castle's doing and not be drafted, you know, not play at all.
I also think when Mitch got out there was a personality trait that got accentuated out there, but it was a problem here too.
Talking to his coaches and from USC coaches was that, you know, his temperament really didn't mesh with Pete Carroll, who was real big on the rah-rah, and he wanted a very vocal leader.
He's not outgoing. He's not the life of the party. He doesn't buddy around with his teammates. He's got a really offbeat personality. He likes a lot of things that guys his age aren't typically interested in. He's interested in military history. He likes to read spy novels.
Are you talking about blogs or message boards? My favorite one is one called Neptunus Lex. Really fucking awesome writer. Foreign policy or domestic policy or whatever. And so,
and I just don't think he related to a lot of his teammates.
You know, Mitch Mustaine is not a type A personality. You know, you can overcome that as a quarterback, but it is a little bit of a challenge.
I mean, I'm really quiet. You know, it takes a while to warm up. How now, brown cow? How now? And so I think that in a sport where everything is, you know, first impressions, a lot of it's how you come off and how you bounce around. You know, people love that. The media eats it up. I mean, to be honest, I just don't have that.
You know, either you have it and those guys believe in you and they buy into you and listen to you and you know, look in your eyes every time you're in the huddle and believe and trust what they're looking into, or they don't.
I think it hurt him in that one start that he got against Notre Dame. I saw that game, and I'm not saying guys intentionally sabotaged him. I just don't think they were into it. You know, there was a touchdown pass dropped at the end of that game that would have won it.
Going deep, out there and open and dropped by Ronald Johnson. There's the one you were talking about, Todd. They had it.
That's all Mitch Mustaine can do. Harrison
Smith falls down. This is a touchdown to take the lead. And Ronald Johnson just forgets one thing.
The ball.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And that has to be the 5th dropped ball on a well-thrown pass by Mitch Mustaine tonight.
One of the USC seniors knows that that could have been his moment.
It was the opportunity that Mitch had been waiting for. Certainly, it could have changed the way Mitch remembers USC, and it certainly might have had an effect on the way USC fans remember Mitch.
I thought the offense was doing really well. Running backs were running hard. Our receivers were ready to go. Felt great and felt like we were going to have a good night.
Now, I have a tendency to believe that part of the reason he stayed out in California is because he kind of got caught up in the LA lifestyle and kind of, you know, LA is cool and the girls are cool and, you know, I'm loving my life, and if I don't play football, that's okay.
We're going to ask Mitch Mustaine for an interview here. As you see, he's being very generous and giving out his autograph to a lot of the youth that have been here, invited here to the practice today.
I mean, there's a certain prestige that comes with being a USC quarterback, whether you're playing or not. You know, I wonder, you know, it would be interesting to really dig deep in terms of the regret, you know. What didn't he do that he could have? What didn't he do that he should have?
I look at Mitch and I say to myself, he was star-crossed the whole way. And then this whole selling of his ADD medication online, where in the world did that come from?
I've always been kind of a thrill seeker, and not always the right thrill, I guess. But you know, I hit a point in the summer of '08 where I really began to struggle with just basic schoolwork, and not understanding it. I understood it, but I hit a wall. Did a bunch of tests, diagnosed ADHD. No kidding. I mean, I think anybody that knows me, including myself, could have told you that off the bat.
It's just a parent talking to him. I mean, he'll just drift off and be thinking about something else and then snap back to it, you know, 5 minutes later.
Is it raining?
We don't understand, and I'm not a doctor and I'm not in the medical field, but there's a lot of people that I'm close to that have ADD, and it's unbelievable how it can ruin a life, how it can change a life, how it can make somebody that has so much going for them move right over here just long enough to screw something up.
Got on the medication for it, and you know, it did a lot of good for me in terms of kind of putting me back in a zone where I could focus again, learning the playbook and understanding the playbook, understanding our game plan for the week. You know, I can come in on Monday and go through our install on Monday and just have it down, just boom. You know, being on Adderall and having that help was a huge benefit to me in terms of on the football field and even in the classroom. Once my body really got balanced with it and I began to understand, it'll numb the pain, but it also hurts a lot of parts, and I ache real bad on them. But get to the Adderall, and I'm really starting to understand the negative aspect of it, and I don't like it. And talking to one of my doctors, I decided I can live without this. This is not something I want to be on my whole life. Quit cold turkey, and I mean, we didn't even taper it off. I just quit. It was one of the hardest weeks of my life. I mean, you feel awful. You're down the whole time. Anyway, came back and have a whole bunch of extra medication. You know, they pull a pretty fair market price, and I thought, hey, why not? It's a thrill. And so, put it up for sale, and you know, went from there. I got arrested for it.
You know, it never really surprises me when any athlete is caught up in a scandal involving drugs. Certainly, I was very surprised when I heard Mitch Mustaine and drugs. You know, from all accounts, he was a clean kid.
I talked to his brother about it one day, and he said, "You just have to know Mitch." He thought it was funny. He said he got a kick out of it. He thought, hey, there'll be some guy on there thinking he's getting some heavy-duty prescription narcotics here, and it's just ADD medication.
February of 2011, I guess, and you know, I had some missed calls on my phone. For some reason, I went ahead and checked the voicemail, and it was the, I guess the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. And you know, right when I got that phone call, I knew what was going on.
You know what really kind of irritates me is I got arrested. I didn't get to ride in the back of an LAPD squad car. It was in the back of like a Saturn. What? Because it was their undercover. I didn't get to ride in the Crown Vic, man. Dudes are wearing t-shirts and blue jeans and driving a Saturn. Fucked up.
To me, it was kind of sad to think, sort of in a Ryan Leaf way. Here's a guy who seemed to have the potential to do almost anything with a football, and now here he is.
I'm just fucking chilling. Van Nuys. You know what's crazy though is I legit slept as well as I'd ever slept in jail. Like I just was like, fuck it, I'm gonna take a nap. I slept like a baby. Guilty as shit. And thank God I was wearing a sweater too. It was cold in there, man. They don't fuck around.
It wasn't a proud moment at all.
It really woke him up, I think, as far as, I'm not invincible.
I think it hurt him a lot, but I think what it really did was it gave ammunition to those people who all along said, there's something majorly wrong with him.
Obviously you were in the news in the off-season for reasons that you're probably not super thrilled about. I don't know what you can say about that at this point.
I'm not gonna say anything. I mean, I'll talk to the teams about it.
It cost me big, not in terms of the hit to your reputation, the hit to my career to that point. I didn't have a lot of plays to base on, but I still had enough to where, I was going to get some looks and get an opportunity. And I think that really killed a lot of it.
I mean, do you regret that it happened?
Yeah, sure. Well, I wouldn't, but but nothing we can do about that, so moving forward.
It ruined any chance he had at the NFL. I think they looked at that and thought, this guy's got a loose screw. You combine that with all the other drama at Arkansas, and it's real easy to believe he's this guy that was created by everybody.
It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. I understand it, and if somebody's going to put a lot of money into you and invest a lot of money into your talents, it's not a very sound investment. If your investment's out there and you feel like he's going to be a risk, I understand that sentiment. So,
how do you feel coming into the draft? What are you
Good.
looking at?
I didn't expect to go too high.
What kind of feedback you get from teams?
Nothing at this point, really. Nothing strong. We'll see what happens.
Unfortunately, not much happened. And for the first time, Mitch was left without a ball field or teammate to throw to. He went from a commodity to a liability. The prodigal son returned home, but this time there was no fanfare. Mitch Mustang Day was not celebrated that December.
In 2006, there was no bigger name in the natural state than Mitch Mustang. 6 years ago, Mitch Mustang was a shoo-in to become a Razorback legend. And when he wasn't chosen in last April's NFL draft, Mustang moved back to Northwest Arkansas. He took a job working at a Bentonville car dealership to pay the bills.
I imagine it's a little bit sensational to show that I work at a car dealership now, or probably want to show the long fall or whatever it is they want to portray it as, which is fine. I mean, it'd be pretty easy to make it a, that long fall from Greece type deal. And I mean, I've got other things going. People want to talk all the shit they want. If they want to sit down and take the time to really reflect on how much that means to them, that's fine with me.
Many of those who once praised Mitchell have since turned on him, and they're entitled to their opinion. But when fans take on a sense of entitlement, that's when lines get crossed.
What happens on my radio show every Monday after a game? Joe's got his opinion, Billy Bob's got his, Frank in Beeville has his. I mean, just everybody's got something to say.
I want to say my piece, and I'm going to tell it to you right now, but I don't care. Screw that guy.
I named my dog Mitch. He left and shot it.
He's definitely a mama's boy, and he is always, I think, looking for his mom to protect him.
High school PTA shit isn't gonna cut it.
He's pretty, tall, sexy.
Mitch bailed on us. Mitch ran away.
True athletes don't do that. They find a way to make themselves better.
He's selling cars now, I heard. Are you kidding me?
Look, I'm not the guy who thinks it's right to say, well, he's just a kid, he's just 18, because there are certain levels of expectations that come with being in the public eye. But, the level of criticism, at a certain point, it's buffoonish. I mean, it's comical.
I understand both sides of the coin. You certainly have the criticism of, you get your school paid for, this, that, and the other. You'll argue to a degree you do choose it. I did choose to pursue that avenue, and I did choose to go that route. So I guess it's a tacit acceptance of the notoriety of everything that comes with it.
With the blogs, these people really, I question whether they should have a voice sometimes.
What is it that makes you so self-important? Why do you feel that your opinion carries all that weight? Okay, the other day was a perfect example. The restaurant we went to, for all intents and purposes, the waitress was terrible. You have the smell of sewage drifting from the bathroom. It was, the food was good, but everything else was just a bad experience. And part of my mind was like, should I write a review? I don't understand that. And the sad thing is that it is going to influence somebody.
The faceless comments, you don't have to really know what you're talking about, where you don't really have to do any research. He's just the easy target.
It's funny because, and I don't even know if I should talk about this, but I will. We talk about Mark Sanchez. I mean, I can't even tell you how much I dislike the guy. And most everybody that knows him feels much the same way. But I shit you not, when I read comments about him, it really kind of irks me because I've been there. I've been the one that those same fuckers have been commenting about, and it pisses me off.
People look at him and they see somebody that's selfish. Well, look in the mirror. So you want to rip this kid? He was a kid.
When it comes to Mitch Mustaine, any perceived confidence or arrogance is more based on the human insecurity and uncertainty that we all possess.
There's no attempt of understanding. It's just ignorance. It's human nature. People are dicks. That's just the way some people are. They're going to try to hurt. They're going to try to be damaging. And once I accepted that, it took me a while. But once you come to that realization, it becomes a lot easier.
The idea that people hate Mitch Mustaine is a pathetic commentary on who we are as people, not on him.
They loved Mitch Mustaine when he took the field, getting crushed by USC in that first game. They chanted for Mitch, but they were quick to boo him when he threw in a critical interception.
I don't pull the sympathy card. I've made my decisions, and I've never said anything negative in an interview. I've never asked for any sympathy from anybody.
Mitch Mustaine should have been and should still be a hero in the state of Arkansas. He did what everyone wanted him to do. He stayed in the state of Arkansas and tried to do the right thing, and yet it still seems like it wasn't enough.
3, 2, 1.
Hello, the X.
You boys got this Mitch Mustaine thing all wrong,
Oh, we have it all wrong. Okay, tell us what we have wrong.
I think this is Mitch Mustaine.
Yeah.
Colin.
Yeah.
So what is he doing now?
Shooting guns in the woods.
Is that what he's doing?
That's what I like to do.
Selling cars and...
This Mitch Mustaine feller, I mean, I don't know, man. I just don't get why you wouldn't just be a Razorback through and through. I'll play for the devil if I could be a hog. I don't care. It wouldn't bother me none. Wear that uniform, run through the A. Love to give me some of that.
If you tell yourself that something isn't that big a deal, then it won't be that big of a letdown if it doesn't happen. And if you tell yourself that something's not that big of a deal after the fact, then really you're limiting the depression you might otherwise have.
There was a time where it really was just a mess for me, and I was really struggling with some things, and one of those deals I just had to get some help and see, and just kind of hash it all out and really do some reflection on it. You know, I feel like there was a lot of demons to exercise and get out there. It's one of those things that's hard to talk about, but it is helpful. You know, I think a lot of people are ashamed of it, and I understand that.
With Mitch, he may have had a period of time where he was swept into being the athlete, and that it kind of took a life of its own, perhaps. And what about being an athlete was fun? Was any of it fun? You know, did he like throwing? Did he like being with the guys? Did he like the ritual of it? You know, did he like the structure of it? And to see if he can see beyond what that particular identity or persona was.
It was just 1 week ago. Mitch Mustaine had a tryout for a pro baseball team. He didn't think much about it. In fact, Mitch was still planning on playing arena football this spring.
I loved playing in high school and didn't get to play. I've always kind of had the itch to get back into baseball.
And so, he's prepping to possibly pitch professionally.
I mean, it's those things I've wanted to get back into baseball, and I've had the resources and the time to do it right now. And so, you know, it's a good time. I figured I'll do it until they tell me they don't want me around and they kick me out. That'll be that, but I'd hate to be sitting around thinking about it later on. So,
you know, as a person, I just wish that he could do away with this identity of being whatever people have him pegged as. It's sad because I think he probably still carries this as his identity. You know, most of us aren't ever going to have to do that. I mean, I don't have to carry around my identity from when I was 18.
It does define a bit of who I am. Baseball was a wonderful opportunity for me for several reasons. To get out of it, to go do something else, and to be able to reshape the identity. I guess what I would think was just rehab the identity a little bit. You know, I chose to do it because I've always wondered if I could still do it. I just didn't enjoy being in the game. It was static, and really for the first time had, you know, this itch to be moving again.
He attended 2 colleges, was drafted by the Chicago White Sox, applied to the Marines, played professional football in Canada, and worked at a car dealership. That's a lot of living for a 25-year-old named Mitch Mustaine.
I think he's still wanting to play in the NFL. I think he still has this idea that, hey, if I go out there and do great things in the Arena League, I can still become a Warner and I can still go into the NFL.
There'll come a day where, you know, I think I'll know that the time's up on it pretty soon, probably. You know, and I'll know whether I'm going to have a legitimate shot or not. And, you know, there's always those flyers. Kurt Warner, he was a lot older than I am when he made it. So
I mean, if you want to go on and try these things, you know, and give a baseball shot and all that, that's fine. But I think a lot of us, we get lost in an excuse in our life and we just kind of hang out there.
I don't know. My life 20 years from now may have nothing to do with sports. You know, it may have nothing to do with military or anything like that. I may be walking the Himalayas somewhere barefoot. I don't know.
You know, I think there were times where Mitch didn't really know, you know, who he was and where he wanted to be, and you know what his passion was and how he was going to get to where he wanted to be. Like many people, wanted to give you what you were looking for. Got the feeling that, you know, he wanted to help you be happy.
There is some. I feel I have something to prove to myself, to everybody.
When it comes down to it, this story's not really a big deal. A can't-miss kid turns into a bust all the time. It happens, but this should have been different.
I blame the adults. I would never blame the kids. I do think they were put in an impossible situation. Houston Nutt, there couldn't have been a worse personality managing this situation.
I think Houston Nutt puts Mitch Mustaine and Gus Malzahn in the same box, and he put them in a box and he put it on a shelf, and I think he'd like to leave it there.
You know, I think we started in the box. What little recourse we had, if you exercise it, gets splashed all over, you know, ESPN with whatever narrative they want to put on it. You know, you don't leave somebody to hang in the public eye and that be it, because you let that speak.
Gus Malzahn has done things throughout his coaching career that make you shake your head. It's common practice for coaches to take other jobs and not tell the players they've recruited. So it doesn't really stun me that Gus did what he felt he needed to do for him and his family.
Gus puts control freaks to shame. What some people would consider an inner circle, Gus has less than that.
I'd like to think that he did hold our best interest, but I mean, I don't know.
When it all began with bringing everybody from Springdale here, I think you set a standard of you're going to let outside beings at least weigh in on your decision of how your program's going to be ran.
I'm aware of dozens and dozens and dozens of examples of Little League parents. It was very easy to convince people that that was what was going on with this woman, Beck Campbell, and her son, Mitch Mustang. And I had that view at one time because I didn't know him.
You know, people have this conception that she's just some crazy psycho woman that demands things for her children and, wants everything handed to them. But, if you look, it was only that 7-month period of time, from the start of the season through January, I guess, that people were, saying she did stuff like that. She doesn't have a track record, in high school going up there and, demanding things from Gus. She doesn't have any record after that, when Mitch went out to USC. She was never knocking on Pete Carroll's door or, Lane Kiffin's door demanding that Mitch go in more. He played one game out there.
It's always the simplest excuse, that people want the simplest reason for something. They want to be able to have the easiest definition, the easy way out. Oh, that person's crazy.
In the end, we all had a hand in the identity theft of Mitch Mustang. And now that the dust has settled, the only thing that divides us is whether or not we own up to it.
I like to have the individual think about what they've been in the past, even before they became an athlete. What did they used to like to do for fun? What were their aspirations? What were their dreams? Who are their heroes? In their wildest dreams, if money were no object, if family were no object, what would they want to do?
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading that article about Matt Barkley, and that was the moment it all kind of came together. And I realized this wasn't it. They talk about when he was, 8? And, makes a video for his grandmother's birthday and talking about how he's going to be the quarterback at USC and this, that, and the other. And, it hit really for the first time a point that we'd sort of tapped on before, but I hadn't really felt or believed. And that was the fact that, it wasn't my dream. And, for all the times I've been wondering, what am I missing? Why do I not feel as invested in this? Or why do I feel like I'm missing something here? That was the moment it all kind of came together. I really started kind of rewinding through my life and wondering if perhaps I missed the turn, where I really was meant to be. And that's, again, I think it's impossible to say. I don't think humans in general, but certainly I know I don't myself. I don't have the insight I don't have the wisdom to say yes or no definitively that I'm in the wrong place. And I hesitate to say that.
When Mitchell signed up to first play football, he was signing up for a relationship that would end bad. The game will always outlive the athlete. And for Mitchell, some habits die hard. Perhaps it's an addiction. Or perhaps it's just hope.
Long before the end,
so strong and brave. The world had just begun. We were the kings and queens, but autumn took the sun, and with it summer's dream. And I try forgetting, but it won't let me go. And time moves slow for wandering souls, but our fathers never cared to show where tomorrow goes. I don't know where it went, the dream I thought was mine, but quickly days were spent on someone else's life. And now this stranger song is all that I can hear, a distant melody, still waiting all these years. And I tried forgetting, but it won't let me go. And time moves slow for wandering souls that our fathers never cared to show where tomorrow goes. Start to see behind the stories told to me, that all my father's sins his father gave to him. And time moves slow for wandering souls, but the one thing we will never know is this: time moves slow for wandering souls. Our fathers never cared to show where tomorrow goes.